12 years old. Your hands are still small, calloused from farm chores and clumsy attempts at play, your days measured by the ringing of church bells and the changing seasons. Yet, in the medieval world, this tender age was not considered a stepping stone to adulthood. It was the finish line of childhood. One morning, you might find yourself dressed in your finest hand-me-down tunic, a crown of dried flowers pressed onto your head as elders lead you into a room full of serious faces. One man, older and unfamiliar, steps forward to claim your hand. You do not understand the weight of the moment, but everyone else does. You are now a wife. This was not an unusual fate. Across Christian Europe, much of the Islamic world, feudal Asia, parts of Africa, and the Middle East, the law permitted a girl to be married at just 12 years old, sometimes even younger. Boys, though slightly older, were often expected to support a family by 14 or 15, but it was the girls who carried the heaviest burden. Today, we think of 12 as the age of school lunches, childhood games, and scribbling secret hopes in a diary. In the Middle Ages, 12 was the age where girlhood ended abruptly, replaced by obligations far too heavy for such small shoulders. By the 12th century, the Catholic Church had officially set the age of consent, 12 for girls, 14 for boys. But this had nothing to do with emotional readiness or personal choice. The reasoning was blunt and unforgiving. If a girl could menstruate, she could bear children, and if she could bear children, she could marry. This was not about love or maturity, it was about biology. Religious leaders and lawmakers codified these ages into society's rules, ensuring that a girl could be betrothed long before she fully understood what marriage even was. Among the wealthy and powerful, these child marriages were tools of politics. A young princess might be sent across borders to marry a prince she had never met, cementing alliances that would shape kingdoms. An English nobleman could secure land in Scotland by marrying off his barely pubescent daughter to the son of a rival family. Girls became living chess pieces, moved strategically across the board to win wars without ever drawing a sword. But the story didn't end with the vows. Once married, consummation was expected. Some husbands might wait a few years, others would not. The law and culture offered little protection, and the young bride's voice carried almost no weight. For those born into royal courts, child marriage was about power, but for peasants in small villages, it was about survival. In poor rural communities, a daughter could be seen as one more mouth to feed. Marrying her off at 12 or 13 meant one less burden, and sometimes came with the promise of resources, grain, livestock, or a truce between feuding families. The groom could be a farm boy of 16, but just as often he might be a widower in his 30s or 40s. These unions were not built on partnership or affection. They were practical arrangements designed to keep households afloat. And once the wedding took place, escape was almost impossible. Divorce was rare, and a girl who tried to run away risked public shame or worse. Her family might refuse to take her back out of fear of dishonor. Villagers could call her names, mark her as an outcast, and ensure she never found safety again. Some records from medieval Europe reveal heartbreaking choices. One account from 14th century France describes a 13-year-old girl who threw herself into a river the night before her arranged wedding. The next day, her younger sister, only 11, was married in her place. What did marriage at 12 actually look like? It was a life of endless labor. A peasant girl rose before dawn to feed animals, gather water from distant wells, and prepare food for her husband and in-laws. If she was already pregnant, she worked through fatigue and discomfort because there was no other option. Childbirth at such a young age was incredibly dangerous. The girl's body was often too small and underdeveloped for safe delivery, and medical help was almost non-existent. Many died in labor, others suffered life-altering injuries such as incontinence that left them isolated and humiliated. Yet despite these risks, a young wife might be expected to bear many children, 5, 10, or even more before she reached 30. And then there was the crushing lack of autonomy. A girl's voice carried little authority in her household. She was expected to obey her husband without question. If she disobeyed, she could be punished, even beaten. Her world narrowed to the walls of her home, her value tied to her obedience, fertility, and silence. Even noble girls who lived behind castle walls adorned with pearls and silk often endured similar loneliness. They were paraded at ceremonies, displayed as symbols of their family's alliances, and shut away when they weren't needed. Were there any girls who managed to thrive despite these circumstances? Rarely, yes. Some grew into respected matriarchs, managing estates and even wielding political power after their husbands died in battle. These women learned to navigate a harsh system and, in doing so, carved out a measure of independence. But these were the exceptions, not the rule. Different regions handled child marriage differently. In Renaissance Italy and under some Islamic schools of thought, consummation could be delayed until the girl was physically older. The intention was protection, but this was inconsistently applied, and many men simply did not wait. Religious texts were often used to defend these practices. In the Christian world, the Virgin Mary, believed to be around 14 when she gave birth to Jesus, was cited as an example. In Islamic traditions, the marriage of Aisha to the Prophet Muhammad was referenced similarly. Hindu traditions also encouraged early marriage as a way of preserving chastity, but none of these justifications ever asked what the girl herself wanted or how she felt. Education for married girls was nearly non-existent. A few might learn basic reading or arithmetic, but books and tutors were reserved for boys. Their minds, like their freedom, were often left to wither. For centuries, child marriage remained a deeply ingrained tradition, woven into the very fabric of society. But by the 17th and 18th centuries, cracks began to appear in this system. Thinkers of the Enlightenment, like John Locke, challenged long-held beliefs by arguing that childhood was not simply a waiting room for adulthood, but a distinct and precious stage of life deserving of protection. Slowly, these ideas began to influence laws. In some regions, the age of consent was raised, often triggered by shocking public scandals involving aristocrats and their young brides that forced society to confront the harsh realities of the practice. Education also became a powerful tool for change. As schools began to open their doors to more girls, marriage was delayed, and young women started to gain opportunities and a level of independence their mothers and grandmothers could scarcely imagine. Still, even with these reforms, the practice did not vanish entirely. The shadow of child marriage lingered, a reminder that changing the law was only one step toward changing deeply rooted traditions. Even today, this history continues to echo. UNICEF estimates that more than 12 million girls worldwide are still married before the age of 18 every year, in South Asia, West Africa, parts of Latin America, and even in pockets of the United States where legal loopholes exist. The reasons are tragically familiar: poverty, tradition, family pressure, and the belief that a girl's worth is measured by her obedience. The story of marrying at 12 is not just a medieval story. It is a human story, stretching across centuries and continents. It speaks of stolen childhoods, lost dreams, and incredible resilience. Because despite the odds, many of these girls found ways to endure. They shared secret hopes, passed on compassion to their children, and slowly, often quietly, helped change the world. So the next time you see the carved face of a young girl in a cathedral, or stumble across the name of a noblewoman married at 12, do not just see a name in a book. See a life interrupted, a story that must never be forgotten. And remember that telling these histories is not about reliving the past, it is about shaping a future where no child is ever forced into a role they are too young to understand.